Hi, and welcome back to Lisa's Stamp Studio. Today we're going to be creating an anniversary card together, and we're going to be using a very unlikely set of dies called the Trio of Tags. You'll find those dies in the holiday catalog. They can be purchased as a bundle with the coordinating stamp set. But I decided to change things up a bit and just use the dies by themselves to create this card. If this is your first time visiting my YouTube channel, I would love to encourage you to subscribe. Click the subscribe button down below, and next to it you'll find a small bell icon. If you click that, you'll receive notifications of when I'm live here on YouTube, as well as when I upload a new video. Let's head over to the stamp table and let's get started on today's card. Here's a close-up of the card we're going to be creating. Isn't this pretty? That gold foil really plays up that very simple color palette. As I mentioned in the introduction, I'm going to be focusing on the Trio of Tags dies. There's a trio of tags here that create tags for different holiday occasions that are featured with the coordinating stamp set. This is called Tags, Tags, Tags. You'll find both of these products in the brand new holiday catalog. If you purchase them together, there is a 10% savings for the bundle, or they can be purchased separately. If you don't already have a demonstrator and you would like a copy of either the holiday catalog or the annual catalog, head over to lisasstampstudio.com and click on Contact Me. I wanted to give you an idea of how the stamp set and the dies were actually intended. There's a whole row or a trio of themed images, so they're all stamped at the same time, but when you die cut them, they come out as 3 separate tags. So we've got Valentine's Day or love, we've got Christmas, and of course we've got Halloween. Just before the video, I went ahead and I stamped the Halloween ones, and then I used the die, and you can see here that it created 3 separate tags. The thing I absolutely love about this is there's a hole already placed in here for you so that you can attach your own twine. The dies themselves, in addition to the trio, also include these doubles of small images that coordinate with the tags themselves. Lots of fun, and I thought, let's just use the tags, and I'll give you some tips about using them individually too. We're going to start with the die cutting, and I've got my Sizzix Big Shot die cutting machine here. If you want to use just one of the tags, my recommendation is that you use a small sliver of cardstock. I prefer it in a column because it's easier to use. I'm going to choose to focus on the center die here, but of course you can just manipulate that based on the one that you want. And then I'll go ahead and place that on top, and I'll place another clear mat over that, and we'll crank it through. I did die cut a total of 4 for my card, 1 for each of the letters. I then used the small dies that are hearts that are also part of that set, and I used a piece of gold foil. I did the exact same thing by putting it through the die cutting machine, and that gave me these 3 small hearts. And I also die cut the letters from the Hand Lettered Prose stamp set. I'm really enjoying this, and you may be looking at this thinking, wow, there's a lot of dies in there. There certainly are, 43 to be exact. There's 1 of each of the letters of the alphabet, and there's also punctuation. These can be purchased separately as well, or they also come as a bundle. Again, a 10% savings if you decide you want the dies, as well as the coordinating Praiseworthy Prose stamp set. Both of those products are in the annual catalog. So I went ahead and I die cut the letters L-O-V-E, and since the process was exactly the same on each letter, I'm going to do one right along with you. I've got my silicone craft sheet here. I love this because liquid glue, hot glue, or adhesive will not stick to it. I'm going to be using the liquid multi-purpose glue. I like to get it started to make sure that it's flowing well, and just make sure you've got your letter going the right way, because I've made that mistake before. And I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of glue to the back. Now, my tip for you about the glue is you need just a small amount. This glue is very strong. I'm going to go ahead and use my Take Your Pick tool to help lift it up. Then I'll go ahead and position that here on the tag. When this dries, you can simply rub it right off the silicone craft sheet. I then cut a piece of white baker's twine. This measures about 6 inches. I'm going to bring the raw ends together, so I've got a loop at the top, and I'm going to work from the front to the back. I'm going to place that through the hole, and then I'm going to open up the loop, and the raw ends to the front, I'm going to tuck through that loop, and then I'm going to pull carefully. I don't want to pull too tight. You don't want to rip that hole. So I've got the L here, and like I said, I've done the O and the V and the E. It's the exact same process, just different letters. Now I want to give you a tip about cutting these to the length that you desire. I found cutting them individually left them looking very, very different. Some were short, some were long. So my tip for you is to line them up. So I've stacked them here. I aligned the bottoms and the top the best that I could. I eyed where I about wanted them, and then I cut them all at the same time. This way I was assured that they would all be even. The next part of our card is going to involve some heat embossing, and I've got a small piece of Whisper White cardstock here. You're going to find all the cutting dimensions for today's project down in the video description below if you are here from YouTube. Since I'm going to do some heat embossing, I'm going to prep that surface. This is the Embossing Buddy. I love the anti-static powder in here because what it's going to do is going to tell the powder to repel where there is not ink. I've got my gold embossing powder over a coffee filter. That will allow me to pour the excess back into the bottle when I'm finished. I've got that open and ready to go. I'll be using my Versamark ink pad. Now before we get too far, I want to give you a tip. You're going to see that these are two separate stamps, Happy and Anniversary, and I've used the very abundant stamp set called A Wish for Everything. I love these because you can build your own phrases, and there's also words for the inside of your card. But my tip for you is when you're going to put them together on the same block, not only will it save you time, but you want to make sure that they're nice and straight before you get stamping. So I'm going to push that Versamark off to the side for just a minute. I'm going to bring in my black ink pad, and I'm using a small piece of grid paper here. I'm going to ink up the word, and I'm going to stamp it here. And I want to check to make sure they're not uneven. Do you see how they're uneven and not equally spaced? That gives me an opportunity now to correct that before I go ahead and start my embossing process. So I've remounted them. I've just positioned the word happy down a little bit further. We'll stamp that one more time, and that looks a lot better. I'll switch back over to the Versamark ink, and I'm grabbing those words, and I'll ink those up, and I'm going to stamp those here. I'll set that ink pad off to the side, and I'm going to immediately come in and powder them with the gold embossing powder. I'm going to turn that and make sure I don't miss a letter. I'm going to give that a small flick to get off the excess. That's a rather small piece of paper, and I know I'm going to use my heat tool, so I'm going to use my tweezers to help me hold that. I've got my heat tool up here, and I'll go ahead and I'll heat set. My tip for you about heat embossing is to hold the gun fairly close. I like to keep the gun moving. That's just a matter of preference. Concentrate on one area at a time. That's going to ensure that you don't miss a spot. This way you can make sure that it actually turns from that powdery finish to a beautiful gold foily finish. The paper itself and the powder will actually conduct the heat, which will make the embossing spread even quicker. Now once it's done, I like to give it a little look to make sure that I haven't missed a spot and it looks good. Here's the great thing about the coffee filter. I'm just going to pinch the top and I'm going to pour that right back inside. I don't save these. They're really inexpensive. I go ahead and I toss it away because I want to make sure I don't transfer one color powder to another. I have a piece of Whisper White cardstock, and this is where we're going to attach those letters that are on the tags. So I've got the L, the O, the V, and the E. I like to set things out before I start adhering them to make sure I've got them in a position where I like them. And then of course I'm going to end up putting my words here. I am going to be using dimensionals for these letters. So I'll start with the L by flipping it over. I'm going to place two dimensionals, one at the top and one at the bottom. I'll use my paper piercing tool attachment to help remove those backings. And then I'm going to place the first one here on the left. And then what I'm going to do now is just work my way across. Once those are aligned, I'm going to do the same thing now with the greeting. I'm going to flip that over. I'm going to place two dimensionals on the back side, and then I'm going to adhere these words near the bottom right. This is a piece of Melon Mambo cardstock. It's 5.5 by 8.5. I folded it in half, and then what I did is I cut a 1/2 inch off just the front panel on the card base. So you can see here I've got like a little bit of a breakaway. This is where I'm opting to place a piece of 1/2 inch gold foil. So I'm going to adhere that here near the bottom. I've just rubbed off that glue that we had earlier, and I'll place my foil upside down on here. Since this is a narrow strip, I love to use the silicone craft sheet because it's going to ensure that I don't get adhesive on my work surface on that narrow area. And then here on the inside of the card at the bottom, I'm going to adhere this strip. I'm going to leave a very small sliver of Melon Mambo cardstock showing below it. This is the layer that we just created. I'm going to go ahead and flip that over. Now we are going to add one of those small gold hearts that we die cut. We're going to add that to the letter here in just a moment because I want to make sure that this is centered on the front of the panel. I'm going to open up the card base. Now that's a great tip for you because that gold paper at the bottom can be quite deceiving, and I'm looking to leave a margin of color all the way around, and then I'll rub from the back. The last thing now is that small heart. Although it die cut 3 pieces, I opted to use the small one. I'm going to flip that over here on my silicone craft sheet. Now even the mini dimensionals are a little bit large for this job. So what I did is I took my scissors, and right here while they're on the paper, I cut them in half to make them a little bit smaller. Cutting them here while they're on the paper is not only going to make it easier for your hand, it's going to make it a lot easier for you to lift them off. So I'll place one of those here on the back. I'll remove that small paper backing on there, and I'm choosing to place that here on the right side of my letter O. There we go. We've got a very simple and classy anniversary card. Here's the one we created together today and the one I created before you joined me. If you have enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up here on YouTube, which is a like. And thank you so much for being here with me today. I look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day.